Hey, what's going on? Welcome to my thing. I'm going to be talking about my first camera, the camera I picked up. This camera is the GH5. So I want to talk about the pros and the cons of this camera because as a aspiring filmmaker who's trying to make things by myself, mostly filming myself, there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and I didn't know until I picked up this camera, if you know what I mean. I'm going to be doing this unscripted, so I might ramble, do things like that. I tend to, but I have some notes here, and I'm just going to talk about if you're filming yourself, doing YouTube videos, or just trying to do some cinematic stuff. That was my goal when I picked up this camera. Is the GH5 your best option for first camera? There's a lot of cons and there's a lot of pros, but overall, I think this is an amazing camera. And so I'm going to talk about my experience and my personal needs before I got a camera. The first thing was I wanted a camera that could at least do 4K 24, and then I wanted to mess around with color correction and things like that, color grading. So I think that 10-bit was something that I wanted to get into, which now that I think about it, you don't need 10-bit. Like if you're posting things on YouTube, then the bit rate's gonna get cut down anyways. But 10-bit is a really good option. I think that the priority list before buying a camera has changed a lot because I didn't know, not having a camera, just using my phone, I didn't know exactly what those priorities were, or I was just listening to people on YouTube that had a bunch of cameras, that tested out a bunch of cameras, that cared about little things like rolling shutter, which I don't think you should ever care about when you're picking up a beginner camera like this. Camera is $400, by the way. I picked mine up for $400. I picked up this lens for $80. This is a $200 lens. This is a 50 millimeter 1.7 f1.7. It's actually a 25 millimeter, but with the micro four thirds, it changes to a 50 millimeter full frame equivalent. Because this is a small sensor, a lot of people tend to go towards full frame, but in my experience, it doesn't matter a whole lot, other than a few things. I'll talk about the cons of the one con I have with this micro four thirds sensor. What it's really not the sensor, it's kind of just the age of this camera. It did come out in 2017. So this camera shows its age in some ways, but in a ton of ways, it does things better than new cameras that are $2,000 coming out in 2025. So talking about the usability in the body for someone who's never used a camera before, that didn't know, I mean, I've been doing a lot of research now, that didn't know a lot of specs. This camera, I was having trouble with the ISO. So it shoots at an ISO 400 base. It doesn't have a dual ISO. I'll talk about that later on, the cons of that. But it's very difficult to remove the noise unless you don't have good lighting. So me using this, and I had to figure out white balance. That was another one. Pretty simple. You can just put yours in auto white balance unless you have different lighting situations, like you're shooting a video and the lighting is changing, then it's going to look a little bit weird. That's what I learned. Shutter speed. This has shutter angle, which, I don't know a ton about this stuff, but it makes it a lot easier for you to shoot video and to not have the choppiness or the motion blur that you don't want, or the motion blur that you do want. And then the other thing is of aperture, and then focus. So I'll talk about that more, but you're going to be using manual focus a lot with this camera, just because it is an older camera. It doesn't have the new AI focus features, autofocus, that a lot of other cameras have. And so I picked up this camera 100% for the crazy specs that it had for a really low price. The other cameras that I was looking at was the Lumix S5, and I just for some reason I like Lumix. I feel like it's a camera brand that really speaks to me for some reason. You got Fujifilm. A lot of people love Fujifilm just because of the aura around it or whatever. But this is I feel like Lumix is a mixture between Fujifilm and Sony, because Sony is the main, just the boring kind of camera brand everybody goes to. I think that I like Lumix and what they're doing, and also they're giving, even now when I go to upgrade this camera, the cameras that are coming out from Lumix, I think they have the S5, the S1 now. They're giving you so much more than other camera brands are giving you for the price that it is. The body of this camera is decently large, but obviously being a micro 4/3 sensor, the lenses are going to be tiny. It's not that big. I guess it's a normal size. I really love the grip on this camera. It's really easy to hold, and also the dials. It has a ton of manual dials and indicators, so you can change the ISO, other things. My top dial is broken, so I can't use that one, but it really doesn't matter because a lot of this stuff is customizable anyways. You have a ton of customizable buttons. I figured I was using another camera, the Sony ZV-1, and it was so annoying because it didn't have any of those manual dials, and I was really having a hard time in the software just trying to figure out what I was doing with it and how to change little things that I need to change just to get a good video, just to change the ISO, just to change the shutter speed and the aperture and stuff like that. And it was just really making me annoyed. So I think that in the future, like these manual dials, the things that this camera has, those are really, really important to me. This camera also shoots really great photos. Before I got this camera, I didn't think that I was going to be a photo person. So I'm glad that I got this camera over something like a Blackmagic 4K, which is $1,000, or a camera that's only video, that doesn't do any stills, or maybe doesn't have a mechanical shutter, because I didn't think that I would be a photography person. But getting this camera, it has a 20 megapixel sensor, which is awesome. Like, it's great. I don't need more than that for a photo, and I love the photos that come out of this. Just using for photos, I don't do a lot of the editing. I just use the auto mode because I don't really, just doing it for fun, not for anything else. I think in the future when I pick up a camera, that it's going to be important to me to get a hybrid camera. So I think my clear path from the GH5 to my next camera is going to be the Lumix S5 II or the S5 IIX. I'll go over some specs about this camera. It does shoot 10-bit, 4K, 4K 24, 4K 30, 4K 60 uncropped. That's a huge deal for a camera that's $400 used, because a lot of $2,000, $2,500 cameras don't shoot 4K uncropped. For me, that was on my higher priority list before I bought a camera, and then now it's lower on my list. I don't shoot 4K 60 at all. I shoot 4K 24. If I was shooting B-roll a lot, then I would shoot 4K 60. But I guess it's a really good option to have, especially uncropped, because the sensor is smaller. So with the lenses, you're going to get a longer focal length. So everything's going to be punched in more. So everything's kind of cropped anyway. So having uncropped is better, depending on what lenses you have. I do find myself, I only have this one lens, it's 25 millimeter. I do find myself really wanting something wider. So in the future, I'll pick up a wider lens, but it's difficult because you need something really wide to be wide on a smaller sensor like this. This camera does 10-bit 422, which just means, like, I don't know a ton about this stuff. It basically means 10-bit 422, you're going to have an easier time pushing and pulling those colors and the contrast and everything like that, the highlights and the shadows. Afterwards, if you overexpose, underexpose, things like that, and then the colors are obviously just going to look a little bit better without banding and things like that. It does shoot 6K. I didn't realize this until recently, but it's an anamorphic mode, which just means open gate. So it shoots the entire sensor, which they kind of hid there in the settings, but it shoots 6K, 24 frames per second, which is like, this is insane for a camera like this to shoot 6K, which is, I don't use it a lot, but it's cool if you want to crop your images at all. The other thing that's literally unbeaten on this camera is the IBIS. The IBIS, it's like sometimes I'll move the camera and it's like the camera didn't even move. Like, it's like a ghost is stabilizing my hand. It's really, really weird, especially if you put the electronic stabilization on. It's freaky good. The IBIS is on this. I don't even know if I need IBIS this good because I can, hold my hand pretty steady. So I think it's also the the sensor is so small on this that it's easier to get more stops of image stabilization. So if I know the larger sensors have a little bit harder job stabilizing because they are larger, they don't have a lot of room to stabilize. So that's another pro to getting the Micro Four Thirds. The lenses are also, like I said, they're smaller, but they're also really, really cheap. So like, you know, a prime like this is $200 brand new, but I got it for $80. So there's a lot of options out there. Compared to something like Canon, you're getting a really good lens options. With all of those pros, I'm going to talk about the cons. The cons, there are only a few, but they're really, really big cons. So if you are picking up a camera for the first time, depending on what budget you have, I had a budget of like $500, so obviously I got this and a lens and then a couple other things. And then obviously I would leave, now that I bought a camera, I would definitely leave some wiggle room for a thing like a tripod, a good light, especially for this camera. Like you need some lighting for this camera. And then some SD cards, some really good SD cards, because this camera does have some higher speeds. And then some extra batteries. I have 3 batteries, and I went ahead and got them with the camera. It doesn't have terrible battery life. Obviously, I haven't used a ton of other cameras to know like how good the battery life is, but obviously batteries over time aren't going to be as good as they are. They're going to degrade, so it's always good to keep a couple batteries with you. I end up using like 2 batteries when I go out, and that just depends on how long I'm shooting. Right, the cons. This autofocus is the biggest one, I think. Autofocus and low light. So autofocus, if you're filming yourself, I didn't think that this was going to be such a big deal, because they said, okay, if you're a filmmaker, if you want to shoot cinematic stuff, you don't need autofocus. Like pick up the Lumix GH5 if you're more into shooting cinematic stuff, shooting movies, and you're not like a YouTuber. I wasn't planning on doing YouTube when I first picked up the GH5, so I got the GH5, and the autofocus is unusable. It's terribly bad. Like it's going to be breathing. You're going to be standing in front of the camera just like I'm doing now, which I'm using manual focus. So I don't know if I'm fully in focus. I was when I started the video. You'll be sitting in the front of the camera like I am now, and you'll be completely blurry, especially with a lens like this. This is a f1.7. So nailing focus is extremely important. Right, the f1.7 is not the same on a full frame camera. It works the same as the aperture. So like a 25mm is going to be a 50mm. The same with the aperture. 1.7 will be like a 2.8 or something like that on a full frame camera. So not as blurry of a background, not letting as much light in, but it's still annoying. And I think definitely I need autofocus for my next camera that I'm getting. A lot of people said it was important. I kind of didn't listen when picking up a camera, because you never know before you pick up your first camera what you're going to be using it for in the future. You have something in mind, but you never know what's going to call you to create something. And then the other thing, like I was saying, is low light. Now they do have the GH5S. The GH5, the original GH5, doesn't have a dual native ISO. What that means is this has a native ISO of 400, and then they'll have a higher ISO in case you're shooting in a darker space. That's going to completely remove the noise, because when you go up higher in ISO, there's going to be a noise. It's very, very difficult to get the noise off of these images. Like, it's very difficult to try to shoot without noise. Obviously, I'm a beginner, so I don't know everything, but that's why lighting is so important when you're picking up this camera. I'm using like a really cheap box light right now, but pick up a decent light. You can change your lighting around you, but it's really difficult to go out and use the camera to change exposure in real time. Even like when I shoot out in the sun, everything is overexposed, and then when I go inside, everything's underexposed and noisy. But yeah, the GH5S has a dual native ISO, which makes it a lot better for low light. I think the sensor has lower megapixels, so it's probably better for video. But from what I saw, the colors are really great out of the GH5S, and they're about the same price. I would say it's probably fine if you're shooting indoors a lot, if you're not shooting outside, and also if you pick up some good lighting, some decent lighting. You don't have to pick up insane stuff, just a cheap light That's all you need, because after you go above 800 ISO, then it gets really, really noisy and you can't really shoot above that. And I tried a bunch of low light scenarios and it was just really noisy. Now the good thing is that the noise pattern is not bad at all. It's actually like, it's kind of film grainy and it kind of looks really cool. The 1080p modes on this camera also look really, really good for some reason. I think it's because this camera has a softer look to it. And that's why the 1080p looks really, really good, especially if you put it next to the 4K. It's like, it's not really a huge difference, because I think that's the look that people want, because it looks more like film versus a super digital iPhone looking thing. But yeah, if you are shooting, I'd say like stay at 400. Even if I go to 800 in regular lighting scenarios, it's really difficult for me to remove the noise from the image. But yeah, the good thing is the noise, there's a very good noise pattern that looks almost like a film grain. So it can almost be a creative decision to leave that noise in. So if you're picking up the GH5, I'd say make sure you get the priorities straight, because I definitely didn't have my priorities straight picking up this camera. But this is the best camera for the price that it is, because I've done so much research on cameras before buying this, after buying this. There's nothing that gives you what this camera gives you for the price, specs wise at least. But just understand the autofocus that you're not getting, and also the low light, and make sure to leave some wiggle room for some couple different lenses. I say get 2 lenses, maybe a zoom lens and then maybe a prime, because there is some image quality differences. Like I said, I wish that I had another lens for this camera. I also wish that I had some more lighting options because of the low light performance and the ISO. And I also wish, I kind of know that, I don't wish, because I do love this camera and I'm going to keep this camera for a long time. But the next camera that I get, autofocus is going to be almost at the top of that priority list. Thank you for watching the video. That is the end of it. I'm going to make some tech videos, some stuff about cameras, some stuff about filmmaking, kind of just everything. I'll probably make a video about my keyboard, my mouse, my desk setup. I'm going to move into a new apartment soon, so I'll make a video about that. And I'll keep you posted on my journey with this camera, my journey with the equipment that I'm going to use to make these videos and to make some creative projects. And I will see you later.